There are 5 different ways to create a fusion comp from the edit page in Davinci Resolve, and in this tutorial I want to have a quick look at all of them. In short, you can create a fusion comp directly from the timeline, you can create it through the effects library, you can create it from the media bin, you have a way to create a fusion comp as a clip from previous existing clips in the edit page, and you can use the fusion bridge for rendering your clips and then going over to Fusion standalone. So each of these methods has advantages and disadvantages and leads to a slightly different workflow, and I want to look at it one by one so that you can choose what is the best version for your editing workflow and your compositing work. So let me go into the edit page. I am here in Davinci Resolve version 16. I'm currently testing out the beta version. If you're in Resolve 15, it works exactly the same way. Also, in case you're just trying out the cut page of Davinci Resolve 16, what I'm doing here is also available there, but I'm using the more familiar edit page for now. So method number 1 from the timeline is pretty straightforward. You can just in the timeline go to the clip that you want to work on and then just click the fusion button here from the page selection. And in this case I am creating a fusion comp for the first time, so I'm getting an empty fusion page basically, where just the media in sends the video signal from the edit page and the media out gives me my final fusion comp after I'm done in Fusion, and this goes further to the color page, etc. Now in this case I'm really starting from scratch. However, I can go here to my clips selector. Here I can see also the clips in the order of the timeline, and here on this clip I haven't done anything yet. On the first clip, however, I have done already a fusion comp. I see this by the 3 stars here, and I can go back to the timeline, or I can just select the clip here and move to that fusion comp, and here I see already a fusion comp between my media in and media out. I have created this little text composition here. Now the clips editor here is not only just for switching between the clips, you can also use it to manage the versions. So if I right click on this clip, I see I already have version 1, version 2, you can rename, delete them here. You can create more, let's do that. So if I create a new composition here, it will take whatever I'm currently working on and put this into a new composition. And if I now here I have it. If I now right click, I see composition 3, which is the new composition and is a copy of what I have previously been working on. If I do a reset, I can reset this composition only, the third one which I just created, and I go back to after the reset, I go back to the default where I just have my media in and media out in this case. So if you are working on a composition and then decide you want to start over again, best way is first create a new composition from the clip selector. That way you keep what you have been doing so far, you create a new clip, then you reset and you have a blank composition in that case. Now I'm digressing a bit, so we are still in method number 1, selection from the timeline. Selection number 2, let me go back to the edit page. Selection number 2 from the effects library, I have under the toolbox effects fusion composition, and this I can just drag into the timeline, either above some clips for an overlay, or let me add it to the end here. And in this case I have a new fusion composition which is black. Empty. So this one is actually just a placeholder. You can use it the same way you can use any clip in the timeline. You can shorten it, lengthen it, etc., move it around. But once you go to Fusion, you have only the media out and everything else you can create from scratch. You can use this either when you're creating some motion graphics or something which doesn't even need media in, or if you haven't decided yet and later in the Fusion work, you can still go to your media pool and drag in things into Fusion and build your comp here in Fusion one by one without having anything from the edit before. Now this way is quite similar to what I've done before, just you're starting out with a blank clip basically. Next method, you can start from the media pool. If I go to the media pool and right click, I have that option New Fusion Composition, and this creates a standalone fusion composition, test version 1 for example, I have here this duration, and this you can still change later in the edit page, but it's your starting framework basically. Test version 1, create. I have then created a clip in the media pool, and this clip, if I double click, I can go over to Fusion, and this clip is an empty Fusion clip of the length that I have just specified, but it is not in the timeline. Now the confusing part is I still see the timeline because I'm working in the timeline, but this clip has not yet been added to, so even though it looks like I'm here, this is a bit misleading. I'm currently working on this test clip version 1. So if I want, I can create my clip standalone, and it remains in the media bin only for now until I later move it into a timeline wherever I want to. Now this version I like particularly if you're creating things like lower thirds, logos, things that can go in multiple places. You can create even your own library of mini Fusion comps or mini tests or whatever you want to do, put it maybe in a separate folder, and then once you're editing you can just drag it out. And for example, a logo or a lower third is just an overlay over any clip, so I think it makes sense to have it only in the media pool first, and then once you need it you can take it out and drag it over the place where you actually want to utilize it. Now this was from the media library. Now I can also in the timeline use right click and do new Fusion clip here. And this is different from just going over to Fusion. Let me demonstrate to you what happens. So for this, let me rearrange the timeline a bit. I want to have a little bit of overlap just to show you the full extent of this. Let me also clip this clip maybe here and here. And now I will select 3 clips at once, 2 from the same layer and 1 as an overlay on top. I select all 3 of them and click right click new Fusion clip. Now what has just happened? Basically Resolve took whatever layout I have arranged in the edit page and what I have selected and created this as a new clip, basically like similar to a compound clip maybe. You have this one clip which has everything I have previously done arranged together and merged together. However, if I now go to Fusion, I see still the original layers inside of Fusion. So if I look into Fusion, I see 2 media ins this time, and they are merged together. Let me show you media in 1 and media in 2 on separate windows here, on separate viewers. And you can see here in the middle, they are both overlaid. If I go to the beginning, media in 2 is blank, media in 1 shows the clip, and if I move to the end, it's the opposite. So this is exactly the layering that I have in the timeline that I have now reflected inside the Fusion comp. So this functionality is very good for moving multiple clips over in layers. So if you want, you can in the timeline layer 2 clips that you want to composite together, adjust the timing perfectly, then decide how long your composite should be, clip them off on both ends, and then move the 2 clips together into the Fusion comp. And then you actually do your real comp inside of Fusion. This could be one application. Scene transitions, stuff like this, if you want to do it in Fusion, that can be used for this. Also, in case you want to work in the color page and then go back to Fusion, this could be an option. Let me show you what I mean. Normally, the workflow is you edit, then you do your visual effects, and at the end you do your color grading. But we see more and more, since you can move around, that people actually do move around. Now, if I grade something first, let's grade this clip with something, I don't know, let's just make it blue for no reason whatsoever. If I go back from the color grade into Fusion, I'm creating now a Fusion comp, a new comp by moving over here. And in Fusion, you see that the clip is still its original color. And this makes sense because the media out is being used to send the stuff from Fusion over to the color page, not the other way around. But if I go back to the edit page, I can of course in the edit page preview my color. Now in the edit page, if I click new Fusion clip, now whatever I have done, including the color grade, is being encapsulated into this new clip. It's basically like a render. It's not being rendered, I know, but it's acting in the same way. So I'm encapsulating whatever I have done, even in the color page. And if I now go over to Fusion, I'm creating a completely new, it's handled like a completely new clip. Everything is baked in, and I'm starting in Fusion with the clip that was graded before. So this is another way how you can use this new Fusion clip feature. And this does not work with the previous methods that I have shown you. The only disadvantage of this, because everything is baked in, you cannot go back to the color page and do changes again. So this clip is really now the final clip, and from this you're now starting again from scratch with Fusion, with coloring, etc. Last method I promised you, Fusion Connect. So on any clip, let me go to this clip, I can right click and click New VFX Connect clip. And what this does is this gives me basically a rendering menu. I can give a name, choose file formats, etc. Once I click Create, the clip that I have selected, or even multiple clips, they're being rendered to disk. And from there now Fusion 16 opens automatically for me. That's my setup here. And here I have the pre-rendered clip is being loaded into Fusion 16, exactly those frames that are coming from the edit page. I can now work here in Fusion, create multiple versions, work completely in the standalone version without anything of Resolve. I can close Resolve if I want to. And once I'm done, I render from Fusion, I render the clip back to disk. And then in Davinci Resolve, I can here right-click, VFX Connect, refresh to get the latest version, and the latest render is just imported into the edit page. Now, there are pros and cons of working in the Fusion standalone, and I could probably create a completely dedicated video to this. If you're interested, let me know. But just in short, so by going over to Fusion standalone, you're basically leaving this one-size-fits-all Resolve super solution with all its memory requirements and all the functionality, and you just limit yourself to only doing the Fusion task, only working on compositing in one slim, stable application, and then whenever you are done, you're rendering, and then you're going back to the editing. So this fits more the traditional workflow of someone edits and then he sends certain number of frames to the compositor. The compositor works in the compositing application. When he's done, it goes back to the edit. So this type of workflow is still available here. And again, the standalone version still has some features which are not integrated into Resolve. And there are some reasons why you might want to do this if you are working with the standalone version as well. Okay, so there you have it. You can create your Fusion comp starting from the timeline, from the media pool, from the effects library. Then we had this option to bundle one or more layered clips, for example, into one Fusion clip and use that inside of Fusion. And I still have my Fusion Connect to go over to the Fusion standalone version. Now I'm at the moment spending some time testing Davinci Resolve 16 Beta and Fusion Studio Beta. So if you are interested around this, I will share more around this in the next few days or weeks. And of course, I'm creating more Fusion tutorials every single week, so stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching. See you next time.